welcome to, Universal Journeys Radio with your host, Dr. Brenda Bates and Donnie Winters. Follow your heart, for only you know which path is right for you. Universal Journeys is about how spirituality intersects with nearly every other aspect of our life, even when we do not see it or realize it. Creativity and expressions are our connections to the spiritual energy many seek to understand, and our identity is forged through this process. Universal Journey seeks to help illuminate the different intersections between creativity, spirituality, and identity in order to empower and enlighten. Tonight's show is about cornucopia of identity, and it is about creative burnout. So our call-in number is 347-850-8292. Welcome, Donnie.
Hello, Brenda dear. How are you?
I'm really good, actually. I'm feeling very well. I had a great weekend.
That is excellent. For all of you guys who don't know, it was Brenda's birthday this past weekend. So happy belated birthday, Brenda.
Thank you. I did have a fun time. A lot of things happened, and I am down in my new office, which kind of echoes a little bit, but that's okay.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
Not at all, not at all. So, it's like, let the creativity begin.
I know, right?
Don't get burned out.
I don't know, it seems like you're defying burnout. I'm trying to catch up with that, though, because after this past semester of school, I've felt extremely, I almost said excruciatingly, but that would be evident as well, but I have felt extremely burnt out because of all the writing that I've done, and I thought it would be interesting for us to do a show talking about how we internalize the feeling of being burnt out, because it can happen to us with more than just the creative aspect of our lives. Like, we can feel burnt out about work, we can feel burnt out on friendships, we can feel burnt out about different day-to-day activities, and I don't think we really consciously recognize, we don't realize those different forms of being burnt out, and we don't really know how to, recover from that feeling. And I think that feeling is what prevents us from accomplishing a lot of things.
I agree, because when you get burned out, you don't feel like doing anything. I was like, okay, how do I rejuvenate? How do I, go out and respark that Kindle again? And it's almost like having a relationship, if you want to call it that, and being able to reignite or re-excite that particular type of thing. And sometimes it can be very challenging.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I guess let's just try to come up with some personal examples to give some people some perspective. About a couple years ago, I was in a relationship where, at first I was like, it was super awesome and I was really happy. But then as the months went on, it started feeling burnt out. I felt like, I really didn't feel excited about it anymore. In fact, I loathed it, and I noticed that it started permeating every other aspect of my life. I ended up feeling horrible going to work. I ended up feeling horrible with the direction that I was taking my life. And I guess feeling burnt out for me tends to come in the form of not caring, just feeling apathetic. And I realized that if I did not do something about that it would solidify itself and irreparably damage, my plans and my future goals and stuff like that. So I ended up breaking up with the person, and in doing so, I felt that rush of being rejuvenated, flood back into my life. And then that's the point in my life where I chose, I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to get a different job, I'm going to be independent and move on my own. And ever since that moment, I chose to overcome that feeling of being burnt out. Everything seemed to fall into place perfectly.
I actually, understand what you were going through, because I would say about a week or two ago, I was feeling the same way. It was like everything was coming down on me, as in collapsing in, because I had to do this, and this, and it felt overwhelming. And then all of a sudden, I just said, hey, whoa, what's going on here? And I had to step back away from everything and get a different perspective. And sometimes when you step back, you have to literally leave things where it is and step back. If that's relationships or whatever, maybe you got to step out for a little while and look at the bigger picture and say, okay, what's my part to play in it? What's their part to play in it? Can I change it? If I can change it, and if I want to change it, then I can do so. If not, then it's like, oh, well, you got to do something about that. You need to let it go. So I would say, like I said, within the last week and a half, I felt that. I felt drained. I felt overwhelmed. I felt, and this wasn't anything. I mean, it really wasn't anything, which is kind of weird. And then all of a sudden, something, after I did that retrospect, I began to go forward one step at a time. And that's kind of what I had to do is say, okay, step back away from here. It's not that you're running away. It's just that you're stepping back to take a breather, to relax, to focus, to get all the cloggedness out of, and I call it cloggedness, all the cloggedness out of the brain, and then move forward. And I'm telling you, when I did, I'm actually doing more now than I did when I was in that position, which is wild.
When you clear that out, you realize that you're capable of accomplishing more and being more productive because of that. I mean, I think we don't realize that being burnt out limits us more than it benefits us.
Absolutely. It was just, I mean, like I said, it was that particular time, and I felt burnt out, and I had to take a step or two backwards. I just had to do that.
Go ahead. Finish what you were
saying.
I'll
say last week was kind of last week's show was sad indeed for both of us, because we were like, oh man, we got so much going on. We really can't do this, so let's put this recording on. And from what I understand, the recording only worked halfway, then start over again. So I had to look at something else going on there.
Yeah, we were definitely feeling burnt out. Well, like I was reading in an article, I can't remember the title of it, but it said that being burnt out, if you don't deal with it, it can transition into depression or like just a general feeling of like apathy, and I think that's something that we need to be very conscious about, because I've learned that in order to overcome being burnt out, I have to kind of give myself a kick in the butt. And I think that's how it drags us all down, because it's basically telling us, why bother doing that? You've been overworked. You shouldn't care. Why? I mean, this is at least what I hear when I'm feeling burnt out. It's like, there's no point in doing it. Just recuperate. But you get caught in that sense of constant recuperation, and you think you're doing yourself some good, when in all actuality, you're just avoiding the actual problem. And I am infamous for doing that.
Well, you make a good point there, especially with relationships. You get burnt out with the relationship, sometimes you have to step back. And if you have to take a weekend away or something like that, or just okay, I can't talk right now. It has nothing to do with you, even though that's a cliche. It has nothing to do with you, but I need my time. And Tauruses are notorious for doing that, because when we get to a certain point and we can't feel a way out, then it's like, okay, we have to back away. We have to leave for a little while and then we come back. I had a friend that used to tell me, you always do most when I need you the most, and then you come back when it's all over with. Like, well, it took care of itself, right? I didn't have to do anything. You're just dragging me in, and I didn't need to be there.
Well, sometimes people don't realize that they have to take care of their own problems in order to understand and learn from them, and the whole burnt out feeling is one of those problems, And my my issue has always been that, like, I would, like, let me use creativity, for example, because this semester I wrote a significant portion of, like, academic paper. Like, I probably wrote close to 100 pages worth of papers. And by the end of the semester, I was just, like, my brain was a pile of goo, more gelatinous than it already is, just a pile of goo, not accomplishing anything. And I was basically like, I just want to sleep for like 8 days and not do anything creative or not think whatsoever. And I realized that I can't do that, because now that I have time to be creative, now that I don't have school going on, like, this is the time I should be enjoying myself and doing what I love to do, and writing is what I love to do. And by telling myself that I'm not going to do anything, I am basically telling my muse, oh, shut up. Which, I mean, I firmly believe that our creative abilities are gifts, and if we tell our gifts that they don't matter, then that starts affecting our lives drastically, because if we feel like one aspect of our lives don't matter, then we're going to feel like other aspects don't matter as well.
Well,
so
you know,
lately,
and our
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say our subconscious starts to, you know, understand. It's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter, so nothing else really matters either. The brain is really weird, but that's okay. So you started doing what? So what did you start
lately
doing?
I've been this is the main point that I wanted to make, that we have to sometimes force ourselves to get out of that funk. And like I've had to, like, get out my notebooks. I've had to just at least scribble words. I've had to try different methods of overcoming that sense of being burnt out and kind of rekindle those embers. That way I can feel creative again. And it started to work. And I think many people need to realize that there are ways to overcome that, and for each individual it's unique. Like, they have unique ways of overcoming that feeling. And I've noticed that I always use work as an excuse for being burnt out. Like, oh, I've been working too much. I don't want to do anything. And now that I'm conscious of myself saying that, I'm like, okay, Donnie, just because you're working doesn't mean you can't be creative. Stop making excuses. Just do it. It's a part of you. It's an important part of you. Pay homage to your creativity.
Nope.
So I don't know if there's been any. Have you had, like, any notable experiences where you have just almost given up completely at being creative because of being burnt out?
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of things that I used to use as, you know, excuses and stuff like that, to just kind of walk away. And again, it's like I just need to walk away from this, and it's crazy. As I get up from my chair and I walk away from my computer, I'm saying this. But how can I explain some of the things? It's sometimes, well, yeah, I guess I can. Just recently I was going to, and I did start a different radio talk show on a blog that I was going to do myself. And then it just, with everything else that was going on, I realized that instead of slowing down a little bit so I could recoup, I actually started to go more. And then another opportunity came up for me. I took it, so I had to back away from another Blog Talk Radio program. And the first time that I did it was like really cool. It was great. I had a lot of people. But it did become overwhelming because I had to do other things in between, and I had to try to figure out, okay, what were you gonna do for this show and keep it going? And then what are we gonna do, or what was I gonna do for the other show to keep it going? And then also things that I had to do on Monday nights when that show was airing, or for the next day. So it was a little bit of conflict and a little bit of like, okay, this is not going to work out here type of thing.
Mhm.
So
it's like it had a lot to do with also balancing.
Balancing, yes, that that could be a challenge too.
Yeah, it's a challenge in my life as well. I am balanced challenged.
Yeah, it definitely can be a thing.
I've noticed that being burnt out can also affect friendships as well, because recently down at school, I've been so busy that I really haven't had a chance to, pay any attention to my friends or express myself to my friends, because, I feel like it's important for friends to express themselves to one another, because then, we are conscious of each other's feelings, and I really wasn't doing that because I was kind of reclusing myself, and I realized that sense of being burnt out was starting to affect other aspects of my life, and I was like, okay, all right, Donnie's got to rein this in, and he has to be realistic. So I realized that, if I didn't change that it would start to significantly complicate my friendships even. And I guess until that point, I never really realized how being burnt out affects everything else. It's almost scary how it can affect everything else. The difficulty is just knowing when it is.
Right. Well, and the thing too is you have to figure this out. No one else can say, okay, you're burned out or whatever, and no one else can help you to come out of it. The recognition is to say, okay, I'm in it. What do I do to get out of it? And let's do it. And for me, or many Tauruses, like I said, we have a tendency to back away. It's not because of our loved ones or our relationship or anything. Sometimes we have to back away from everything to clear our heads, to clear out everything that's around us, and then we can go back in once we've done that. And then life becomes better. It becomes sweet.
Exactly. Well, everything falls back into balance. And
yes.
I feel like being burnt out is a symptom of being unbalanced. And I immediately, after I realized that I was burnt out, I was like, well, where did that originate? Why am I feeling burnt out? And I realized that it was because I was putting such a time and effort into my work that I wasn't trying to put any time and effort into other aspects of our lives. Despite how busy we may be with work, we need to allow ourselves time to be creative for ourselves. We spend so much time doling out creativity and our resources to other people that we forget that we have to do it for ourselves as well. We have to create a sense of balance within us in order for everything else to function the way it should. It's just like the human body. If one part of the human body doesn't work at its full capacity, then it's affecting the rest of the body. It's the exact same with the mind and spirit too. Yep.
And I think that's where some people, they get on with taking drugs or alcohol or some other type of stimulant to try to get them out of the funk, and a lot of times it does not work. And they become addicted. Even though they want to do it once, the brain says, oh, I got this nice substance in me. I want some more.
And it's interesting. Go ahead, Brenda, sorry.
I said, then what do? You give it more.
It's interesting that you bring up medicines and stuff for that, because I know people where they've been creative before taking those medicines, and then after taking those medicines, it's drastically affected their creativity, either preventing them from being creative or putting them into such a creative overdrive that it burns them out in the opposite way.
Well, and then you have another aspect too, where some of the greatest songs have been developed and produced, and it's like, okay, which way do you go with that?
Look
at
you're making a good thing, but it's such an exercise of creative ability that it's almost destructive.
Right. I mean, it opens you up, but yet it opens you up to many things other than your creativity. I mean, you got your creativity there too, but a lot of it doesn't. So it's a two-edged sword.
It is. And again,
it goes back to
that balance.
Yep. And meditation has a lot to do with that too. I do believe anyway. If you could step back and meditate, and that helped me. I mean, what got me out of the little bit of funk, or the funk, I should say, is I went away for the weekend. I went away for a women's getaway weekend at a YMCA camp. And there I was outside. I was walking. There was no cell coverage, so we didn't have to be bothered with that. And then the other thing, too, was I was able to go away from everybody, sit down, and meditate for an hour. And I said this a little while ago on another show. And that helped me out tremendously. I mean, that is like, yeah, that's what I needed. And I was able to achieve it. And when I did, something lifted out of me, and I was good to go. And that's when I started like, whoo, yeah, let's get back into this. You know?
I love the sound effect.
That just comes along with me. That's all. We send out somebody stuffy and like, oh, we got to do that. We got to be professional. Yeah, the heck with it. You only live once. At least once this lifetime, I think.
I completely agree with that philosophy in every way.
But even that, I was a couple Fridays ago. We had what is called the Art and Wine Walk downtown here, and I was downtown with my sister and a school friend that I was went to school with, and we were walking, and people were saying, "Hey, hi, Brenda," you know. And we talked a little bit, and they had to wait for me because the talking got a little bit too long sometime, and so I kind of reined it in and pulled back, and then I turned around to my sister. I said, was I very talkative in school or when I was younger? And my sister looks at me and she kind of smiles and said, yep. When I went into the service, though, my husband at the time, I used to talk, I guess, all the time because he came up with this song that his buddies gave or sent to me. And it had to do with, you talk too much. You never shut up. You talk too much. You're boring me to death. I took offense to that, and then I stopped. I completely stopped. I didn't say hardly anything at all. I stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And that took stuff away from me until just recently, and then I'm opening back up to be who I am. You know, that took things away from me. And now it's like coming back. So it's kind of cool.
Right, and it's interesting because that avoidance of, you know, talking because you feel like you talk too much, I've gone through that too. Except and this is where I've started to realize that other people's sense of being burnt out or even their negative emotions can definitely affect me. Like, I had one person tell me once to shut up, and for months I wouldn't talk because of that.
Yeah.
This was like when I was my freshman year of college, and I just felt like what I had to say meant nothing. So I was like, why should I say anything then? And that affected my grades, that affected my friendships, just because of that one action. And I guess that's another reason why we need to be conscious of how our own, you know, dealing with that, like our being burnt out, how we with it, how it affects other people. We need to be conscious of not, you know, harming other people in the process.
Right. I mean, they affected our identity, our true identity. And that's the thing is people have a tendency to do that. Sometimes they don't realize it, sometimes they do, because they want to change us. And then when they do that, they affect our identity of who we really are. And they make us or get us to become someone else totally different.
Exactly. Definitely.
And when you get to a point in your life where that person is no longer in your life, you lose that identity, and you're like, all right, I'm lost. What do I do? Who am I? Because the person that you identified with is gone. Now, who the heck am I? And that could be a struggle in itself. That's a little scary sometimes, at the time, because I did that. When I got a divorce, it's like, okay, I identified with this guy, and now it's, I don't have him anymore. I don't have that identity, and I'm sort of kind of lost out there because I don't remember who I was. And you're talking, I was 30-some years old, 40-some years old, something like that, when I got a divorce. So, I mean, all those years I was someone else, except for the first 19 years of my life. But after that, I was somebody else.
Right.
So I had to, figure that out. And once I did, I was okay. But then somebody else came in my life, and I identified and was like, oh, Brenda, stop. So I had to do that to realize it on my own, because most of the time we don't even think about that.
Yes, definitely.
And it was huge.
And I guess, again, the difficulty is just being conscious of that issue.
Yep. And it goes back to taking responsibility for your own actions, too. It's not their fault. It's your fault because you let it happen. You wanted to connect with this person so much that you allowed it to happen. It's not their fault. It's really nobody's fault, but it's just you need to take responsibility for that. So,
well, even blaming other people. Oh, sorry. I'll finish that thought after with the break. Well, I was just going to say
that. We are so in tune with one another.
The phones aren't faster than us.
That's right.
Okay, let's go to break, and then we will pick it up afterward.
There you go. So we're gonna go on to break. We're gonna listen to some Kid Rock, "Born to Be Free," 4 minutes and 24 seconds. Here we go. See you on the flip side. And welcome back to Universal Journeys. Our topic today is cornucopia of identity. Our telephone number is 347-850-8292. Go ahead, Donnie, your turn.
Okay, so if you guys like our show, feel free to go visit us on Facebook and like our page. If you go onto Facebook and type in the search bar Universal Journeys, you should be able to find us. Or I cannot speak today, oh my goodness. Or if you go up to the URL bar and you type in facebook.com/universaljourneys111, that'll take you to the same page. We post a lot of different things on Facebook, uplifting memes. We share other pages' content. We talk about our show on there. So if you really like following us, definitely go on there and check us out. Back to you, Brenda.
Absolutely. I have to say something here. This is the first time that we've been on this show that we've actually been in the same town.
I know, right?
Even though we're not in the same location right now doing the show, but you're back in West Branch, and we're like, wow, I loved it.
I am 800 miles closer.
That's right.
Yeah, I basically glomped you when I saw you. It was pretty funny.
It was kind of funny. So, okay. Should we take our first caller?
Okay.
Okay. Hello, Jay. You're on the air.
Oh, hi. I'm just listening. I remember Brenda Bates from a show she had a few years ago, and I was just hoping to listen to her voice again.
Oh, and who is this?
My name's Ellen, and I remember Brenda used to do a lot of EFT, and she did help me a few years ago.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Is it the same Brenda Bates, or is there another Brenda Bates that I'm thinking of, too?
Well, it might be. See, the voice is not ringing a bell with me. That surprised me. So is it possible there are two Brenda Bates in Blog Talk Radio, both on the spirituality side?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, there is. Used to be, she actually divorced my cousin, but she was my cousin, and her name was Brenda Bates, too.
She used to go as Brenda Bates, medicine woman.
Yeah, yep,
Okay.
she did.
So it's a different Brenda Bates. My apologies. But if you don't mind,
Hey,
I'll just
not a
stay
problem.
on and listen.
Okay,
Of
so I'll
course.
put you back on, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, so let's get the next caller. Hello, caller, you're on the air. And welcome to Universal Journeys.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. My name is Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Hello.
Hi. So my
yeah.
question,
Mm-hmm.
do you see me purchasing my home this year? I'm supposed to go look at a home that I saw on the internet this week, and I was wondering if that might be the home that's meant for me.
It's like I had to switch gears there because I wasn't prepared to do this type of work. I had to switch gears. For me, what I'm getting with this particular house is you have to be very careful with some of the hidden things that people or these individuals are not telling. Okay? Because there's some underlying things there that you might not be ready to handle and take care of or able to do that. So you really got to look at the small print. You really got to look at, the foundation and, the roof and stuff like that. So just make sure that you're really, really aware of it. And if you can handle it, by all means, it's yours. But if not, if it's too much, then it's not.
Is there anything standing out for you right now that you think is an issue?
Well, I named two of them already. The foundation of the house itself, because I don't know how old it is, but it feels like it's a little bit older, and also the roof. There's some sort of a leak in a peak of the roof that will become an issue if it hasn't already.
So you haven't seen this house yet, though, have you?
No, I was just going to go look at it. I'm
also getting a feeling from, there's some sort of window problem, too. It's very, very subtle, but it could develop into a larger problem. So I'm just feeling windows.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And where is this located at?
It's in a community in New Jersey. South Jersey.
Right. Is it an older building?
Well, it was built in 1947. It's a little Cape
Cod
an older building.
Home.
Yeah.
I
was thinking of refurbishing a house in Medford Lakes, and I kind of switched gears and decided to go over to this other township. But maybe I should go back to Medford Lakes and rethink that.
I think you should go back to Medford. Yeah, I think you should go back to that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That feels more your speed.
Yeah, I should probably just refurbish the one house I was thinking of.
I think that would be a good idea. Because on a spiritual plane, the other one that you were looking at has a lot of extra activity within the house itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of sensitive to that kind of stuff, so that would not be good.
Nope.
Okay.
That's some of those details.
I'll avoid that.
And the other house is on a lake in Medford Lake, so...
It's a mellow house. I like that house.
You do? I have to refurbish it, though. It needs to be remodeled. Maybe I'll go back and revisit that in a few months. Save up enough money to do that. All right. That sounds better for you for a spiritual sense, though, the one in Medford.
Yeah, because the other one that you were looking at, not the first one, but the second one, there's too much activity there for you. It would be overwhelming. And that's the type of detailing, too, that I'm talking about. Most people don't even think about that. They'll see the foundation, they'll see the walls and the windows and everything else. They'll see that, but they don't look at the spiritual aspect of it, the other entities or energies that are within the house itself. And some of them are not necessarily ghosts. It's just the energies that's permeated the walls and the floors and the ceilings and everything else within the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get activity in my apartment, but I think that's honestly just my loved ones. So I don't think that's anything else. I don't feel anything negative. I think it's just loving energy.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm going to have to go back. There's a lot of Indian reservations from where this is, Medford Lakes. It's all Indian names. So probably very, very spiritual grounds.
Right.
Right.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're most
you guys
welcome.
Put me back on track. Thank you.
Okay, cool. You're welcome. Bye. Okay, let's take another caller here. Where are we at? Oh, okay, got that. Everybody moved up on my thing here, so I was like, Hello, caller, you're on the air. Or did I just take your... Hello?
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. How about you guys?
Good.
I go with your topic. I'm sorry?
Okay. I said I'm as happy as I've been in a long time, so yes.
Me too.
So what can we do for you?
I guess I can go with your topic for you tonight, whatever you can get, my journey. And I like the topic, too. I like how it's put.
Yeah, the cornucopia of identity?
Yep.
Yep. And then we were talking about burnout, too, creative burnout. So that was kind of the thing that's going on.
Yeah, we're talking about how, we're going to be talking about how we internalize that feeling of being burnt out as a part of our identity.
Cool. Yeah, I kind of did that and trying to get back to it. Whatever you can pick up on that one for me.
Well,
had a rough weekend.
For me, with the burnout thing is you stuck your toe, and I'm just going to say you stuck your toe in many different pots, and it's time to kind of like gently release it. You like pull it back gently from a lot of things that you're actually doing, and that would help you to unplug from the burnout so you can regenerate and rejuvenate.
Mhm.
Cool. Gotcha.
So, and there's two major connections or two major individuals in your life that really suck you dry.
Mhm. Yeah, I was picking up on that too.
You know,
Two?
and just backing away from both of them a little bit more than what you have. Actually, a little is a lot more than you have. Then it'll settle down some, and they'll figure that they'll have to do something on their own. And sometimes you just have to do that. You can still be their friends, but or family members or whatever. You just have to step back so that you can breathe and relax and rejuvenate yourself.
Mhm.
So
yeah, we don't necessarily always realize that.
If that's helped.
Is it a male and a female or both male?
Good question.
I'm getting a feminine energy, like I'm feeling something feminine. So I would go with the female one. We don't really realize how other people can also suck our creative energy away from us too. And I think this is the type of situation you're in.
Got you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because now the male in your life, okay, does he have a passionate side to him? Because I'm getting a little bit of that.
Past side? That's what you asked. Meaning in what way? Like past life?
Or no, not past life. A passionate side. You know, like
passionate.
Yeah, more so. Okay, so he's the other individual. So
yeah, I let him have it yesterday on the voicemail. So.
Yeah.
I kind of figured he was one of them, and I had enough of it. So I guess you're right. I have to let him go for a couple of days to make him cool down.
Yeah, him cool down, and you be able to clear your head.
That's what he gets for pushing my buttons.
Well, sometimes people have to learn, and sometimes they don't. And now, because now this is a reverse psychology thing here, okay? Is they're pushing your buttons to get the energy that you exude from pushing your buttons, and then when they're done, you feel drained, and they feel like, oh, okay, I'm going. See you later. I don't need you anymore right now.
Exactly.
So that's an energy. That's an energy drain right there.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, because he did it on me because I left and he took it out on me and I took it back at him. So, gotcha.
Yeah.
Got it. That's how. Oh, so we did a reverse. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. You're feeling more energized now too, aren't you?
Yep. Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I'll give him a couple more days and then I'll start up again.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Cool. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The dead has risen.
There you go. There you go. So,
cool. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank
put
you.
Back on hold, okay?
All right.
Thanks. That's too funny.
I know, right? That brings up a very interesting point, too, because, I mean, not only do we cause our own sense of being burnt out, but other people can, too. And what makes it more difficult is that we don't always know how to weed those people out of our lives.
Right, and that could be one of the most challenging things that we have to do, is to try to figure out, okay, back up, how do we do this? We don't want to hurt their feelings, but we need to take a break from one another for a little bit. And sometimes you have to be blunt, and sometimes it's like, okay, I just need a little bit of time away, give me space, or I'm going to go away for the weekend or something like that. But you have to do that. I mean, if it comes to kids, then kids, maybe, you can have your parents watch the children or grandparents or, an aunt and uncle or somebody else for a little bit so you can get away. Mm-hmm. And in a relationship, when you have a relationship with someone with kids are in it, you really need to take a date night. You really do, because date nights are awesome. I mean, you get to go out and you get to have, be intimate, and there's many ways of being intimate, but intimate with your partner, just the two of you, away from all the children and stuff like that. That's a necessary thing to do.
Definitely. And I think, even when it comes, some certain friendships, because I know, I've been in those toxic friendships before where the other person continually sucks you dry of your creativity and your passion for things, either because they don't share in the same passions or because they invalidate you based on your creativity. And I think that's even though it's difficult for us to remove those people, we have to introspect and be like, okay, while I have this person as a friend, and while I think they're a good friend, what is their friendship doing to other aspects of my life? And that same thing could go for relationships, basically any kind of relationship, because those relationships have the potential to do that to an individual.
Right. Right.
And I can think of so many different examples of that happening to me. I remember a long time ago, I think this was when I was in high school, I had a friend who would always make fun of the fact that I loved to write fan fiction. And for those of you who don't know what fan fiction is, it's basically writing about a specific franchise. Like, say, if I loved the Avenger movies, I could write fan fiction about those characters, Basically my own spin on that universe. Well, I used to like writing fan fiction, and I still do. And I had a friend who would continually tell me that I was wasting my time, that I was really dumb for even doing that intelligent people wouldn't do that, and that severely impacted my creativity to the point where I didn't do it anymore. And I started becoming more miserable. I lost my, that passion associated with my imagination, and I had to regain that. And I spent probably a year doing that because of that one friend. So that begs the question, is a friend a good friend if they do that to you? And I definitely think that is something that can lead to a person being burnt out, is someone invalidating someone else's passion or someone else's creativity. I don't know if you've experienced anything like that, Brenda, but in the past,
I have
that several times. Yeah. People discouraging you from doing things,
Right, and it's it's funny that we even entertain that thought. It's like, okay, why do we entertain that thought? Because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because it's our passion. It's what we like to do. We allow that individual to take over and to control us. And why are we doing that? It doesn't make any sense. I don't know if it's because we need to experience something like that or what. I mean, I've felt that. It's like, oh, you don't need to do that, or, oh, this is crazy, or that's stupid, or that's, I just recently had a friend, I bought a graphic design business just recently, and I had a friend tell me, oh, that's just a fad, everyone's going out and buying those. I'm like, what? Really? You actually said that to me? And this has been a passion of mine. This is a dream come true for me that I've been wanting for years. And all of a sudden I get it, and they're like, oh, this is just a fading thing. Everybody wants to be a graphic designer. And I'm thinking, what? Are you crazy?
How would they know that it's a fad anyway?
Right. And the thing is I would never do that to this individual. That's not something I would do. For me, I encourage. I don't care if other people are out there doing the same thing. I don't care. Because if it's your passion, it's your passion. I'm going to help you go forward with that. I'm going to encourage you to do that. And this was totally the opposite. Totally the opposite. So, like I said, I understand where you're coming from. The good thing about this, though, is I've been through stuff like this before, and it's like, I didn't let it bother me. I'm like, nope. I know what's happening there, but I thought about it for a little bit, and it's like, nope, this is not happening. I'm not letting you take me down there like that.
And what's interesting is that people who are also burnt out themselves will become envious of other people who overcome that and try to drag them back down into it by discouraging them.
Yep, you got it.
And I guarantee you that is the thing that causes it all the time with people.
Yep, and it's like everything else with that. Yeah, if someone's doing better than you are and you make it and they don't, they're like, oh, well, you think you're better than we are. And I mean, I've heard that excuse too. And it's like, no, I just want to do better for myself. If you're fine being there and then miserable and, where you're at, fine, stay there. I'm not. Don't criticize me for not wanting to stay there because I'm not staying there.
Exactly.
If I move on, it's because you didn't want to move on with me. It's not because I moved on without you or I didn't want you around.
Exactly. And, if the other person is really upset, then why don't they just, talk about it instead of trying to discourage someone else? Honestly, if I had someone who was upset with my success and they felt like that they, if they were discouraged, like I would have them talk to me before they would try to discourage me, because maybe I would be able to, encourage them a bit, And but the thing is, at the end of the day, it's their job to get through it. But at least in me providing that encouragement, they'll know that I'm on their side. But people are always so eager to completely invalidate someone else, either to their face or subtly behind their backs.
Right. And the thing is you could try to encourage them, but if they're going to be the way they're going to be, you're like wasting your breath.
Mm-hmm.
That
exactly.
goes back to taking responsibility for your own actions. If this is what you want to be, this is how you want to act, fine, that's yours. That's not me. Don't give it to me. I don't want it.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. And I can tell you what, no matter what point you are in life, you will always encounter people like that. Every experience you have, it's just learning how to adapt to those people or remove those people. And it's very difficult learning how to do that, but it's very important that you do learn how to do that, though. It'll save yourself a lot of problems.
Yes, that's true. So it is almost break time. We need to take another break here in a few minutes, or not a few minutes, but a few seconds here. And when we come back, we will be taking your calls. I know we have another caller on the line here, so we'll get that to give them ample amount of time to ask their questions and for us to answer them. So stay with us, caller, because we will be back in a little bit. And this is going to be about 5 minutes. So if you guys want to get out there and get a cup of coffee or something to drink, or take that little bathroom break every once in a while, because I probably have to.
Well, we know we have to.
That's right. So here we go. We're off to the races. Not really, but what friends are for. Here we go. And welcome back to Universal Journeys with your host, Dr. Brenda Bates and Donnie Winters. Follow your heart, for only you know which path is right for you, no matter if it's a short discussion or a long discussion. Our telephone number is 347-850-8292. And it's to you, Donnie.
Hey, so let's do a quick promotion first. If you guys are curious about any more of our discussions, we're also going to be posting our shows on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com and you type in Universal Journeys, you should be able to find our YouTube channel. And also, if you can also find me on YouTube. My name on there is Donnie Winter. I know, very different. So if you just tap that on, you'll be able to find me and check out my videos. So back to you, Brenda.
Okay. So let's take this caller who has been waiting on the line for about 10 minutes now, 5 minutes of the break, and see what we have to say here. And then once we're done with that, then we're going to have Donnie talk some more about what he found on the Internet. So here we go.
Right.
Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hello there. How are you all doing?
Hello. Good.
Great. How are you?
Oh, I'd say I'm doing pretty well. I've still got my arms and my legs, so pretty good.
Yay!
Good.
So you have a question for us?
Well, I noticed that you're talking about burnout, and one of the things that I find extremely frustrating is that when it comes to the issues of life, very, very few people that I meet look at the macro. In other words, everyone's generally focused on their issues with their particular things that are going on. And obviously, everyone's got their own stress that they need to be able to speak about, that they need help with, etc., within community. But there's very, very few people that I see that are looking at the macro picture. In other words, take a bird's eye view or even a satellite view of the Earth and say, okay, what's affecting everyone? Then bring it down to another level. Okay, what's affecting each and every nation or country? Okay, take it down another level. What's affecting the cities? What's affecting the different towns? What's affecting the communities within those cities and towns? How is this all interconnected? Because if people were to start looking at it from a macro point of view and then work down towards the micro and say, okay, the reason perhaps that I'm struggling with particular issues is not just my fault. The reason that I'm struggling with particular issues is because there's a macrocosm around me, and we need to be able to start on a grassroots level to deal with the macro problems. And that might mean that people need to work together. But the biggest problem, once again, is that people cannot work together because they're too focused on the micro, generally speaking. And is the micro important? Yes, absolutely. But I believe it can only be addressed by focusing on the macro.
That is a very interesting point. We've kind of touched on this entire shows too, because, like, I know there are different things that we may not realize are happening on a larger scale. Like, I mean, even energy-wise, that ends up affecting all of us. And I think we often place blame on other people when we should be focusing on the larger issue and working as a collective to resolve the larger issue. So that's a very excellent point.
Part of the issue, though, is because we can't work together with that. There are a lot of people who do not want to work together. And so as looking at the macro, you feel like you're in isolation. You know, you're like, okay, what can I do to help this out, because we're one individual. So that's why I always say, okay, work on yourself, work on the, you know, not the macro, but the micro, you know, and just go from there. Because then once you figure it out for yourself, then you can go forward and help others. At least that's what I've done.
But the biggest
figure out
problem
my issues that I can help out. Go ahead.
Yeah, but the biggest problem is that I feel that there's too much compromise in an individual, in inverted commas, being successful. Because in order for someone in this world, generally speaking, for the most part, to be seen as successful, in the westernized world at least, because I can only claim to know about the westernized world, you have to sell out on some level or another, generally speaking, because the entire monetary system is rigged to ensure that people are going to be in debt and that there's going to be poverty. As an example, like Donnie just mentioned, the entire energy system is rigged to ensure that people have to pay high prices, to ensure that no one's free from the grid. The entire political system is rigged on various different levels to ensure that certain candidates get in. So that whole system is rigged. The entire court system is rigged, because you can go back and look, where did it come from, who's actually in control of it. And all of these things that I'm saying, there's a lot of proof for it if a person's willing to look. But the problem is that people can't even seem to get into small groups of, say, 10 to 12 people and say, what do we all have in common? What aspects of our ego, okay, and when I say ego, I'm talking about not necessarily the psychological ego, but the, you know, having a big head type of ego, where a person needs some spiritual developments, myself included. We've all got egos that we're trying to deal with, so that we can take our spiritual development to another level and say, you know, guys, maybe we're all struggling with, say, for example, finances. How can we connect with someone that perhaps lives on an organic farm to say, well, we're 12 people, we've all got X amount of resources. Let's try to put our resources into a backup place for us to go if there's ever a problem with anyone. And then if that person loses their job or can no longer support their family or something like that, then they can go and live in that space. Why don't we all put our resources towards that as a group, 12 families, for example, perhaps. Now, then there would be no more problems of homelessness if anybody was doing that, as an example. And that's just a start. That's just the beginning. And then people have to agree, non-aggression principle. You know, I'm not going to steal your tomatoes from your tomato patch. You don't steal my carrots. And we share with each other enough that we can survive. And we thrive because we're willing to work together and then sell the extra that we have. I'm giving you a very simple example of working together in a practical solution of saying, is there a place that people can live that's off the grid? And then people will say, oh, but that's really tough. That doesn't really make life easy for me, having to work or having to put in additional time to make that extra space available. But what people aren't looking at is, if you don't do that, then yes, you might get certain benefits by standing on others based on the principle of climbing a ladder. in a world which is horribly imbalanced for the most part. I'm not saying people have to become communists. Karl Marx didn't invent helping your neighbor. But at the same time, I'm saying the so-called democratic process in a cartel capitalist society, and then there's many other problems that stem from that because of polarization. And Donnie, you can attest to that because I checked out your YouTube channel. You can attest to the fact that it's not cool to live in a polarized world where people are like, seeing black and white. So all of this is a symptom of people not working together to be able to come up with the basics that are needed so that people can have more control over their own lives.
Mm-hmm. And you bring up very interesting points, and I think you're trying to provide a practical solution, which I think that's very important, but I also think it's important to outline that not everyone thinks practically, because, I mean, I can honestly say that humanity is probably the farthest thing from practical. But here is how I go about looking at it, and this kind of correlates with Brenda's perspective, because since we can't get everyone to view things from a macroscopic level, within ourselves we have to view things from a macroscopic level. And I think by working on our own issues, we are showing other people around us that we have the capacity to resolve those issues, and that realization becomes contagious. And in doing so, they themselves also start realizing it, and they start making those self-changes. And then before you know it, we have a small group of 10 or 12 people making those small choices, or those small changes, and then it spreads out from there and there. And I think that's the most feasible way that we would be able to achieve that macroscopic perspective and avoid these instances of imbalance and inequality and burnout, because we serve as great examples for other people when we overcome those issues, because not everyone knows how to overcome them within themselves, but once they see it, they see like actual representations of it, then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we can totally do this.
And we don't have to go into a group. Yeah, we don't have to go into a group, to do the things that some group consciousness does. I mean, they've had, like the Jones, drinking the Kool-Aid and some of the other things, which they did something similar to that, but look what happened to them. My philosophy is, if you can figure out how to overcome some of the things within your life and make it better for you in the process, you learn to understand and help others through that process too. So you can give back. And the cool thing about what I do, or how I've done it, is as you do figure this out for your own and stuff like that, then it's like, okay, I can give you the tools that I did for me, but allow them at the same time to be who they are and to experiment and be there when they fall. Don't tell them they have to do this, this, and this, and this. Let them experiment. Let them go forward with their life, but be there when they fall. Don't judge them. Don't harm them, and encourage them. Always encourage them. And then your community starts to grow more and more and more. And then you overcome some of these obstacles of finance and not having food and stuff like that. But for me, it's like you have to start with the micro to get to the macro.
I think you can definitely say yes. You have to start with the micro, of course, on various different levels to be able to navigate your way to being able to do something in the macro. However, I think that also this idea of help yourself first can easily fall over, if I could use that terminology, into the realm of being stuck in a mass mind control system, because it's very easy once you start on that path of I'm dealing with me, and then all of a sudden it's like, but I'm fine. I don't need to worry about everyone else. And that's how the system perpetuates itself, because there's like a line between the poverty, like stricken level, and then there's I'm using economics as the best example, but even on an emotional level, some people that live in different countries have it much easier than others, depending on their particular, and I'm saying this for you, Donnie, depending on their particular outlook on life, right? So, like if you were living in, say, for example, Dubai, you wouldn't be having a very good time of it, probably. but you're living in the United States, in which case you've got a much better environment to live in for someone that's, putting out your type of information, where you're very adamant about who you are. So like, macro factors affect people massively, and then it's sort of like for the person that's living in Dubai, that's maybe someone similar to Donnie's type of challenge in the world, where the world doesn't necessarily agree always. Their ultimate might be, I want to move to the States, and they move to the States and they forget all about the people that are still stuck in Dubai. Right. And because of that lack of groupthink, positive groupthink, we get polarized into the negative groupthink. I'm okay now, and that's the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is that I've often asked myself, if I was a multi-billionaire and I had everything I needed at my disposal, would I really care so much? Would I really even say that I cared so much about people starving in India right now, for example? So the challenge is, how do we find the balance in going forward and at the same time staying true to what humanity needs to be able to truly thrive?
Well, for me, what it is okay, and I've come across some of that stuff already with what I do. Not necessarily the spiritual aspect, the actual commerce and getting out there and making the almighty dollar and stuff like that, is I have to stand up for who I am. I cannot bend to the ways and the means of other individuals. That takes a very strong person to stand up to your own morals and for your own morals. And then when you do that, you can then step forward. And this is a process. My philosophy is you cannot forget where you came from. Huge for me. Because those people are the ones who helped you to get there in the first place. So those people over in Dubai, okay, that need help are just like the people who helped me to get to where I am today. So you or me, we have to look back and help others to make it too. Now, we want to make a change. Okay, they're starving and they need this and this and this. It is up to us to go over there and say, okay, let me help you. Let me teach you how to do these things and provide for them a little bit so until they get on their feet. And I'm talking about a whole populace, not just select individuals, a whole populace, and say, okay, let's get this going. If I was a billionaire, a multi-billionaire, I would be over in Dubai, I'd be over in Africa, I'd be all over the place saying, okay, I'm going to give you the tools so that you can learn to do this yourself. Because the United States has failed, okay, in my opinion, because they give people money to stay home, to be on welfare. If we taught those individuals, instead of giving them money, if we taught them how to make a living, how to get out there to help their neighbors and stuff like that, I think we'd be better off instead of throwing money at it. Now, part of the issue is when we do give money to certain organizations that's supposed to help people like in Haiti, they only get 1% or 1 penny out of thousands of dollars that's thrown at them. That's because of all the governmental stuff and stuff like that, and it's very unfortunate. That just grinds me that we're giving money, that we've given money to help people in other countries, and they don't even receive that help. Where the heck is that money going to? That's the issue.
Agreed. And
the sad thing is, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to say quickly that the saddest part about it is that there are methods and there are mechanisms to be able to change all of that. There's even mechanisms to be able to change it from like a ground level up inside of the United States. There's things like, for example, Bitcoins and something called colored Bitcoins, which runs on the Bitcoin network, because we're talking about economics not right now, and we're talking about core issues. There's ways, like if you go look at Robert Steele's books, Open Source Everything, and a whole bunch of information that he's put out, Collective Intelligence Network, he has created an entire restructuring process that could take place for the United States government to be able to be turned around. But no one knows about Robert Steele because the people on the ground aren't even speaking about him because everybody's polarized. So like the biggest challenge is, it's like, how can you depolarize enough people to actually get people to look at the real issues that need to be changed. To actually, you start with the money system and you say, okay, well, let's use gold, silver, and other commodities to trade amongst each other instead of using a currency that's got nothing backing it, that's totally controlled by banking families from Europe, etc. How do you get people? That's the biggest challenge. Why can't communities just say, hey, okay, Saturday is meeting day, and we're all going to, at least 100 people out of the community from each family meet and actually discuss these real core issues. It is fascinating to me how people just cannot seem to get together. No matter how many people you tell, they always seem to say, oh, well, we can't do much, or, oh, I don't want to think about that. Oh, it's almost like maybe it's because of the fluoride in water. People are just lethargic and apathetic, generally speaking.
But the fluoride in water actually calcifies the pineal gland, which really causes havoc to the body.
So that could be
maybe the first thing to do is just start drinking rainwater, everyone. It might kill you, but at least it'll be a chance to maybe get the brain clear if that's what fluoride's doing to our brains.
Yeah,
right.
It's doing a lot of stuff. And again,
drink rainwater.
There are some states, or in the United States, and the government itself is trying to control that we can't produce any vegetables. I mean, there's a law that they're trying to pass, and they've been trying to pass, that we can't grow our own vegetables, and we can't collect rainwater.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, there you go.
Which is totally
that
crazy.
Would say something about how important it is to be able to control people, getting them medicated through the water system. So, why can't 100 people from 100 families, just with one person that represents each family, if not everybody can make it, just get together in their local community and say, okay, let's have a consensus vote on this. How are we going to get the next 100 towns together, and then the next 100 cities together to secede from this BS government, to economically secede, or to for resources secede and say, okay, because they've done it in my nation, and I won't say where I'm from because I want people to think globally, and I don't want people to judge me based on where I live. But where I live, okay, people have actually started taking entire blocks and just totally disconnecting them from the government and saying, we don't need your services, we don't need your input, we'll have our own private security force in our town, and we don't need you, leave us alone. Because ultimately, if you're happy with doing things yourself because the government's not delivering, then that's a great way to regain autonomy and eventually say, if you can get enough people in a particular area, you can actually say, you know what, we're not going to do this anymore. You go have a look at Iceland. Iceland chucked bankers out of their nation because they got enough people together to say, this isn't right, what you're doing is wrong. So we're not going to stand for it. Either the whole parliament, they have parliament there, or we could call it the Senate. The whole government needs to leave, and then within 3 months they rewrote their constitution by voting on the internet and coming up with ideas on the internet. They rewrote their entire constitution, and they chucked the bankers out. What is wrong with places like the United States and many other countries around the world? Because the United States is the reserve currency, so I'm not picking on you for no reason. The dollar is the current reserve currency, but probably not for long. And people need to start saying, hang on, we need to secede. We have to secede from this BS government. They are killing us. And you need to have enough people in each town.
Yeah, and we're getting more and more of that happening in the United States, by the way. Just because the news media and stuff doesn't carry that. They're becoming wiser and wiser and doing more and more stuff. So
well, the biggest problem is
Robert.
three things. There's the issue of getting access to food that is actually nutritious for you. That's on the food side, and obviously that will go with that goes shelter and being able to have transportation and all those basics. But then there's a thing called scalar weapons and advanced technologies. People are not focusing on scalar weaponry and things like that and advanced technologies. So in the event of any war, you're still going to lose. And then obviously the third thing is the ethos. People don't have the right ethos because they don't care about each other. And that's actually the first one. That's where it all starts. In the mindset, people don't have the information to be able to make the changes. So those three, you don't have those three. You don't have the infrastructure and the food and that to be able to like free your mind physically. You don't have the defense to defend yourselves, and you don't have the ethos and the education to be able to do part 2 and 3. It's a terrible, terrible state of affairs. I don't know what to do. I'm calling into radio shows on Blog Talk to try and help people and to try and find like-minded people that actually wants to work together.
Yeah, it's just, I'm actually going to start, because I pulled up Robert David Steele, and it's quite interesting that he, a former CIA agent, that kind of like, okay, what's going on there?
Well, there's a lot of people. Ted Gunderson was FBI. Ted Gunderson's been exposing the government for years. Some of these guys actually have a conscience and decide, I'm not going to work for the government anymore. I'm not going to be involved in this stuff anymore, and I'm going to let people know what's going on. I mean, here's the thing. You know, when the guy stands up and says, listen, I'll explain to you how the entire Federal Reserve is corrupt, the entire Senate is corrupt, they've all been bought off, and you guys are all voting, it makes no sense to even vote because the Diebold voting machines have all been compromised, and he starts saying stuff like that and putting his life at risk, that's when you can kind of say, you know what, the guy's probably a good guy.
Well, and that goes back to a book that I read a long time ago by William Cooper, or Milton William Cooper, Behold the Pale Horse. And he got kind of slammed because of the UFO stuff. But I'm telling you what, that book had a plethora of information about the government and who was behind what and things like that. So, I mean, Behold the Pale Horse by Milton William Cooper was a very good book as well.
Yeah, sure. Look, the point of the thing is that people like that, regularly get assassinated. And the saddest thing about it is people in communities don't actually grab onto those people and say, oh my goodness, you have got valuable information. Wouldn't you like to come over for dinner? How can we help you? How can we help pay for your bills so you can continue to do what you're doing? Teach us. Show us what it is that you know and what do we need to do? But instead, people cower in fear because they're polarized into this type of fear mindset where they're freaking out the whole time going, oh, uncomfortable, slightly uncomfortable. I don't want to even speak to that person because they're bringing up issues that my friends might not like. I'm so worried about what the rest of the collective will think about me. People need to stop focusing on what a collective thinks and start figuring out how can I create my own better, more positive collective.
Again, it's easier said than done because, it is. It's easier said than done because the philosophy, all of the stuff that's going on within the government and outside the government is fear-based. Right down to religion, everything is fear-based. So that's how they control everyone. If we would stop such fear, we could see the reality of it and say, I'm not buying into that anymore. And that's where I started to say, I'm not buying into that anymore.
Yeah, and it comes from education because at the end of the day, basically people need to be able to have the opportunities. Often you can look at any highly educated country, nation state, and you generally find that where there's the most education, it's high-level industry, arts and humanities is very big, etc. You've got various different people living in that particular country, and everybody is very tolerant because there's a wide level of understanding, and also the innovation level is so high that the services that are needed, even by the worst off people in society, are available on the basic level. So you look at countries like Norway. It's because of mainly oil that they're very wealthy, but there aren't very many, or I should say, aren't as many social problems as say somewhere like Iraq. What do we see characterized in Iraq? They've also got oil, but they don't have any ability to be able to defend themselves and to actually utilize that resource because they had a dictator over them, but the only reason they had the dictator was they weren't able to organize against that. Whereas you look at somewhere like Europe, now there's another oil state that's got oil off its coast, but you know what? Norway, it comes out of Europe, which has had many hundreds more years of I don't like to use the word democracy because democracies are manipulated, but it comes out of a political system that has been organized for a very long time, a very, very, very long time. You have the Persian knowledge coming in there. You have the Arabian knowledge coming into Europe, and combine that with having to fend off Genghis Khan and the rest of the crew that tried to attack Europe, and then numerous skirmishes throughout Europe for centuries and centuries, of which complex political systems have evolved. Then you have the Enlightenment coming out of the 1500s with, Martin Luther and the rest of the crew pushing the gates open for science. Yes, and religion. And religion was in there, but at the same time, it was a lot more tolerant religion than the Catholic Church. So that was the beginning of a really new time. But unfortunately, it's been kind of that knowledge that would have spread further it's the opposite now. There's such a smorgasbord. There's such a myriad of things out there. You could turn on the TV and you've got 1,000 channels of random stuff that isn't necessarily going to educate you, and in any particular philosophy, as you put it, on any high level, and and it's distracting everyone. It's the circus. It's the new version of bread and circuses of Rome. So what I think needs to come in is obviously balance. And I think the more that people start feeling so challenged and so much stuff, so many things are wrong, the more people will start saying, well, how do I get balance? How do I get balance? And it's for the people that are already awake, like your radio show, and people on Blog Talk that are very enlightened, to get onto some kind of a networking option. I think if there was a way to do networking where we can get like 100 people in every town, in every state, and even around the world, in every country, in every town, 100 people, then there'd be a huge push towards saying, okay, what are the core values that we can just agree on? Regardless of whether or not you agree with a peripheral issue, what are the core issues that we can agree on? So, for example, say no to evil practices in fractional reserve banking. Say no to energy that isn't green. Say no to various different issues that are core issues for the whole of humanity. In other words, yes to solutions and no to the evil side of it. And then say, okay, now how in our communities, on our local level, can we implement systems for real change? That's what needs to happen. Sorry, I know that was long-winded, but that's what I see needing to be happening.
No, you make some very excellent points, and I think the fact that we need to achieve a balance between the microscopic and the macroscopic is a very, very important point. And I could use this example for YouTube also, because earlier you were talking about how people seem to focus on themselves and their own little corner of the world. And I know I advocate for gay rights and everything because obviously I'm gay, and there have been issues throughout the world that other people face. Like they face a lot harsher discrimination than I would face here, and I've talked about it before. And I think it's important for people to realize that just because we have issues here doesn't mean that our issues are the worst issues. Some other country out there may have it a lot worse. Sure. But the thing is being able to speak about it. And I think that shows the other people in that country that, they do have people who care about them. And I think that in of itself is empowering not only for other people within my own country who won't speak out, but for those in that country who are afraid to speak at all. So in a way, that is also kind of building a community.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, you go look back at like ancient Rome, and I think you can go look at the city of Caligula, and there was another one as well, but one of them got hit by a volcano. I can't remember which one, but I think it was Caligula. And then there was ancient Greece as well. Do you know about those times in history?
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. I mean, since you mentioned gay rights, there's various different times in history where empires have functioned very well. And I'm not saying that they were always perfect. I mean, a lot of things happened with the Roman Empire. They generally, they took over a nation such as, what you might call the Vikings or the Gauls or whoever it was that they were going to take over. And they they slaughtered people, but then they enculturated people. So then those people said, okay, we give our allegiance to Rome. or they could just surrender. They could say, okay, look, we don't even want to fight with you. We realize that you're superior on a military basis. We're surrendering to you. And because of their tactics and so forth, the Roman Empire became really huge. And I think it got too huge for its own good and then eventually imploded at various times. But the point being that that empire survived at various different times. They actually had the way it was structured, right? And the reason that we have this heavy thing coming down in religion is that there was a writer. He was, I'm just trying to remember the name of the writer, but it wasn't one of these church fathers. And he had his own issues with prostitutes and so forth. And he actually he was so traumatized by the fact that he couldn't control himself that he kind of condemned the rest of the Christian community and said, oh, you shouldn't. There was even at one point something about people that bathed that didn't. It was holy to not bathe. It just got ridiculous during the Middle Ages. So there's all these weird things that people don't realize what are the origins of them, because in Rome they had a liberalized version of sexuality where you could be married, but the institution of marriage and family was very big there. And I know this might be a touchy subject for you, so I don't really want to go into the issue of what is marriage or what's the definition of marriage or civil partnership, but here's the thing. In Rome, a man and a woman could be married, but then it wasn't unusual for both of them to have concubines, and it could be of either sex, okay? And it was sort of like you didn't really talk about it, and also you shouldn't have too many all the time, because then you were seen as being very sorts of, you weren't able to control yourself. But if you wanted to have sex with other partners, this was at a certain time in Rome, then it wasn't really frowned upon. If someone found out, they'd be like, oh, okay, so they're getting together with that person. At the same time, I think it was ancient Greece or it was Caligula, but the older men would actually seduce young boys. They would buy them things. They would, and that by today's standards, that would be pedophilia. But in their community, once the boy had reached puberty, they were actually, it was not unusual. It wasn't even so much frowned upon. It was like, oh, so and so is getting together with. You must remember, this was at a time when you think about times like David and Goliath and these stories out of the Bible. Young people would sometimes die at 26, and their lives were a lot shorter as well. And there were a lot more. Some of the young guys that were studying in Greece and that sort of thing, you could be a professor at the age, or in the Senate at the age of 18, 19, or 20, if you were coming from a wealthy family. So this is how different that society was. Now, we look at that back in history, and that was a thriving empire that survived, that for hundreds of years, even some of these empires. And we look at now today, and the writings of some of these church fathers have so been manipulated in our society that now you get people killing other people simply because of their sexual orientation. That's what people don't think about. People don't understand history and how things could work, and therefore, and I'm saying could work, I'm saying it that boldly. I'm not for forcing anyone to do anything, but there's differences in culture. That's what people don't realize. People need to be tolerant of differences in culture as long as nobody's actually forcing themselves on or hurting somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
True.
That's the key.
I agree completely.
Yeah, I have to agree too,
deep,
but
right?
there's so many out there that don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, here's the thing. I mean, in some countries, this is the heavy one that would have probably touched on most people's nerves. And I'm talking about history here. I personally think that in our current day and age, limitations on what can happen in relationships should be there, because most people are stunted in their growth until, for example, the age of 18, because the school system dumbs people down. I've seen some homeschoolers that are far more intelligent at age 15 or 16, and I mean, in days gone by, in ancient times, or not even in ancient times, but even in sort of, I think, the 12th century, 13th, 14th, 15th century, you had some young people that were 16, in some cases, running entire battlefields, where they were running the battlefield. So, and that's a big thing to touch on. And then you see also, you can think about age issues in Spain. Up until recently, I think now it's a much lower age of consent than many countries up until recently. And then at the same time, you have issues of it's issues of age, and it's issues of in many countries it's issues of sexual preference. So it's like if those rules weren't there, governments wouldn't benefit from enforcing the laws. Same thing goes for cannabis. Same thing goes for criminalization of hard drugs. Because when they criminalize these things, then it creates a power base. I'm not saying all things should be legal, okay? Because, for example, heroin and cocaine, very hard drugs, very susceptible for people to get highly addicted to those. So if they were easily available like candy, then it wouldn't be good for the whole of society. But taking away the criminalization aspect of it means that the underworld doesn't control it.
True. True. Very good point.
So very heavy commentary. But I mean, it's dangerous to even speak about these topics. I mean, like I said before, I'm not for anything changing in terms of age brackets personally. Reason being that so many people are they're not because of the school system, especially. For the most part, people are not developing their cognitive abilities until they're well out of school and actually have to experience the world and so forth. Because of the dumbing down, you go read John Taylor Gatto, The Underground History of American Education, for example, and by extension, he actually writes on the whole world's education in the Western world, because that whole system came from the caste system of India. Because when Dewey and those guys went to try and find out for the British Empire, how could we create a good working class of obedient workers for the Industrial Revolution, they based it off the caste system of India. And in the caste system of India, they believe that you're not allowed to move up or down on your station in life. So if you're an untouchable, which is basically someone that has to beg, that's not allowed to do anything but beg, then you can't move into a different caste. You can't marry someone from a different caste. And I'm talking about history here. So and that's the worst part. It's even challenging for me to talk about this right now because there's so much stigma attached to it. I'm actually even fearful of people picking up on or judging on what some of the stuff that I'm saying, because people are so polarized. For example, in some countries, especially some of the tribes, which are very peaceful, many of them very peaceful, and not at all hostile in their methods in their lives. They're relatively peaceful people. They're either hunter-gatherers, or in China there's a tribe. I study ethnology, and I also study some anthropological stuff. So I've been recently studying different tribes around the world. And I think it's also in China, they actually have ceremonies in which the young people get together. And there's one tribe, the Zhou tribe, and also I think another tribe in China, that literally they build huts for their young people to get together with other young people before they decide to get married, so they can figure out who they like. And for them, physical contact is not a problem. In some tribes in the Amazon jungle, I think it's Amazon, it's not unusual for someone to have I think up to 10 wives or husbands. Okay.
That's true.
It's also not unusual for them to marry someone that's much younger than them, and I mean much younger. So but people might say, oh, but look how unevolved they are, and but at the same time, the big question for me is, are they happy, and also is anyone getting hurt? If nobody's getting hurt by that, then that's a very different scenario, and that's the biggest thing that I'm concerned about. I don't want to hurt anyone, and I don't want to be hurt by anyone.
Mm-hmm. And that's true. And it goes back to the way people look at it. I mean, the Western world, as in the United States, we think that we're so sophisticated and we know everything and things like that, but that's not the case. That's not the case. You know, I don't know where we got our moral standards from or what we have to go by, but I'm telling you, I was down in Peru for about 11 days. In 2004.
Wow, that's amazing.
And those people down there, when you look into their eyes, they don't judge. You don't see that. I didn't see any judgment in their eyes, and they helped one another. If there was someone who didn't have food, that whole community came together and helped them with that. They didn't have a place to stay. That whole community helped them. You know, we can learn a lot from them. And
it's a simpler way of life. It's not this kind of polarized thing where everyone wants to try and get one up on the Joneses, keeping up with the Joneses. And people are so polarized.
Yep.
Definitely.
They are, and that's sad.
I know I'm outspoken, but I'm just I really appreciate that you let me speak about all this stuff because I actually, my heart goes out to people that are, dealing with maybe some kind of sexual orientation issue. It's not an issue, but the community views it as an issue. And, then it is an issue for people because of other people's perception. And really what people do that's not hurting anybody else is really their choice. I personally am for strong families and being able to build strong communities in whichever way possible. But ultimately, if somebody chooses to love somebody else, then that's not really the biggest issue in this world. Like the Federal Reserve issue, okay, and the fractional reserve banking is way bigger an issue than whether or not someone has a particular sexual orientation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's like my heart goes out to people that are struggling with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we can learn how to love one another through that culture. I've been around enough gay people that is like, really? I mean, you guys treat each other better in certain areas than the husband and the traditional husband and wife do.
Well, in
they
some cases,
take care of one another, and it's amazing. It's beautiful to see. If people would stop being so fear-based.
I just have to say this as well. In our so-called Western nation, where we consider ourselves so much more civilized, people don't realize the level of brainwashing that they've had. Because what? Is it really civilized? I'm just going to say this on air. Is it really civilized to mutilate a baby boy at birth, like 8 days or whatever after its birth, or in some cases a few hours after its birth, to literally mutilate its sexual organ? Just because you decided to? It's a human rights violation. That kid cannot protect themselves.
Right. Well, but it goes back to the Bible.
Civilized society. Yeah.
It goes back to the Bible of being, circumcised. Because you're unclean.
It's ridiculous. It's messed up. I agree. It's totally, and you know what? That came out of Egypt. It was out of Egypt with the slaves. And they did that it's highly sophisticated. I've researched it as well. You can go to henrymarkow.com, who is a Jewish guy, and he's got some articles on it about why that actually gets done. And it's a slavery mechanism. It is literally a psychological mechanism to create slaves, which is why it happened to the slaves in Egypt. And but then again, this is a very touchy subject because as soon as you say anything, how can I put this? As soon as you start delving into and questioning, not even stating that you think that this is what's going on, just hypothesizing that just maybe there was a strong Egyptian influence on the Jewish people. Now you're an anti-Semite, whatever a Semite is. Apparently a Semite is someone that comes from a particular geographic region or has particular features, which could include a lot of Arabian people perhaps. But apparently I'm an anti-Semite then, or somebody else that says something about maybe it has something to do with the Egyptian influence on the slaves, and they retained it. But nope, that's apparently anti-Semitic, whatever that means. Sorry, it's crazy.
It is crazy. I mean, if we go back and look at all the if we go back and look at many laws and things that we follow, it's because of stuff that happened way back when. And with what you just said about the Egyptians, I can so see that. In some of these other crazy stuff that comes about. Yeah.
Well, anyway, guys, I want to let you get along with your show because you've only got 8 minutes left. But I really appreciate you having me on the show, and it's really brave of you to speak out on your issues or whatever issues you want to speak out on, and having a show. I must admit it takes a lot of guts because not everybody. Anybody that says that it's easy to do a radio show or that thinks that it's easy to speak out on issues, you just try and do a regular radio show. Not only does it take a lot of time to prepare usually, but also people can judge you. People can really judge you. So you know what? Good on you both for putting your show out there.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Appreciate your contribution.
Definitely. Keep going.
It's been a pleasure having me on the show. I mean, being on the show. Thank you so much for that. It's not easy. I've been trying to figure out how to get the information out and how to connect with people, but it's really tough. It's really tough. So I mean, I'm sure you know that. So to all the listeners out there, people who are listening to this, keep connecting with everybody in your local communities. Keep trying to reach out. Keep trying to form groups, and hopefully through education, people will start like recognizing ways that they can change things for the better. And always remember the non-aggression principle. And that's all I got to say for now. But keep well, everybody.
Okay,
thank you.
Take care. Thank you for coming.
You take care.
We enjoyed it. Now that was cool.
That was definitely
very educational, and I mean that was his passion. See, and with all of that comes back with the identity, and he had this passion to put this out there, this information. It meant so much to him, and he was right there with it all. And we need to really step up and look at that.
I completely agree.
You know, I mean, Donnie, you're doing a wonderful job of stepping up and putting that stuff out there about what you believe in. You know, that's just like with this show, is because I believe in the spirituality and what you believe in. You know, I take that on too. And getting this information out there, we should not be afraid because it's what needed to be done.
I think what discourages people a lot is that they believe that they don't have any power in their voices, and this is something that I've said time and time again, is that our greatest power is our voice.
Yes.
If we use our voice, that's how people listen, and when people listen, that's when they learn.
Yep. You know, the other thing too is what I've noticed throughout doing these shows and with what I do in life in general is if you have passion behind you, people will be more readily able and willing to listen to you. But you got to have the passion, and you got to open up to these guys with what they do too. It's just like this gentleman here. I mean, that was a passion. He knew his stuff.
He did, definitely.
Okay.
And he needed an outlet too.
That's right. He needed the outlet, and guess what? We provided that outlet for him tonight. And
we sure
it's
did.
just it has to get out there, and we do. I mean, he does make a lot of sense there with thinking the micro versus the macro, and that we need to really focus on the macro too, because they both go hand in hand. For me, like I said, is I got to balance myself first. Doesn't mean that I'm going to be all egotistical or I'm going to say this, and this. But I have to balance myself first to be able to understand and be able to balance outside in the macro world.
And see, the important thing is that even while we're balancing ourselves, we still remember that there is a world beyond ourselves too, and that's, I think, what he was trying to say, especially. And I think that's what we do also, but not everyone does do that. Right.
And it has gotten to there's two different things that's going on with society right now that I see. One is a me, okay, which is what he's talking about. The other one is, that wasn't me that did that. I'm not taking responsibility for that. Is we don't take responsibility for our own actions. Because
there's
we're taught
a separation between avoiding and controlling.
Absolutely. And, you know, with that, it's like, come on. You got to take responsibility. You got to see where you fit into this situation. Every situation that happens to you, there is something that you did to bring it towards you or for you to look at. What is my part to play in it? You know, it's not about the other person all the time. Believe me, I went through that phase too. Oh, yeah, that was theirs. And it's like, no, that was mine too. What do I need to see in this situation? And when you start to learn to take responsibility for your own actions, you start to see a bigger picture. And you start to see more and more like, okay, I can control this. I can control that. And then you begin to grow a little bit more. Oh, I can control this. I can help this individual out, or I can do this, you know. Or you can take control and say, nope, that's not happening. Sorry. Nope, you better stop right now. That's not going to happen. And then you walk away or do whatever you need to do. But you have to stop it. So
Precisely.
with that, we need to learn to help one another more. And by putting this information out there again, we are helping others to understand and to see and to become aware.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge.
Our own example can be influential.
Yes.
That is the important
because
thing.
When we become contagious about something that we truly believe in, guess what? It becomes a contagion. I just made that word up, by the way. I don't think that's a word. But then it becomes contagious because everyone will start like, oh, and it's like little light bulbs going on all over the place. Oh, I didn't think of it that way. But yet, if you think out of the box, if you become more educated in certain aspects, then you're going like, oh, okay, I woke up out of that fog. Now I see that. So with that said, I have 90 seconds. We have 90 seconds left. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
So
we accomplished a lot today.
Yeah, we did. I want to make some couple plugs here. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming to the show and on the show. It was really a great show. A little bit different than what we were expecting, but yet it fit right in. So I'm awesome with that. It's awesome. So right here on Mystical Awakenings, we have Beyond Smoke and Mirrors Monday from 7 to 9. Mystical Awakenings Radio was Wednesday 7 to 9, and True Paranormal is Friday 7 to 9. So with that said, follow your heart, for only you know which path is right for you. And don't forget to help people out, okay? We'll catch you next weekend, and we'll see everybody on the flip side. You're awesome. Have a great week.